There was a reason no one stayed past 9 p.m. at our office, but that night, after a fight with my wife, I stayed, and suddenly I realized I wasn't alone. It started with a stupid argument. I don't even remember what it was about anymore. Some combination of bills, laundry, and the fact that I was always working late. Amanda's voice crackled through the phone, sharp and exhausted, and I, in my infinite wisdom, decided not to go home. Instead, I walked back into my office, letting the glass door sigh shut behind me, and told her coldly that I'd be staying late. "Suit yourself," she snapped. That was at 9:12 p.m. Usually when I said working late, I meant around 8 p.m. Maybe 8:30 on a bad day. That was the unofficial norm. Most people cleared out by 7, and a few of us lingered just a little longer to wrap things up. But I'd never stayed past 9 before, not once. In fact, I realized as I sat back down at my desk, this was the first time I'd ever been in the office this late since I started working here. Sitting back, relaxed, I opened a spreadsheet I'd already finished earlier and pretended to tweak numbers. Checked emails I'd already replied to, scrolled aimlessly. I wasn't really working. I was just existing, killing time, being stubborn. The longer I sat there, the more it felt like I was proving some petty point to no one but myself. At one point, I opened Amanda's last text, thumb hovering over the keyboard to type something. An apology, maybe, or at least a peace offering. But I locked the screen and tossed the phone aside instead. The minutes ticked by. The office grew colder. I became vaguely aware of the silence, how absolute it had become. No more elevator dings, no more distant chatter or footsteps, just the quiet hum of machines and the soft clicking of my own mouse. And the darkness. Because I was the only one left, the entire floor had slipped into shadows. The motion sensor lights had long since shut off in the surrounding cubicles, leaving my little workstation like an island of cold blue glow in a sea of black. Every time I moved, the overhead light above me buzzed faintly, flickering like it resented still being on. The shadows in the office corners felt thicker, more patient somehow. Watching. When I finally glanced at the time again, it was 11:02 p.m. Shit, it had gotten way too late. I sighed, rubbing my eyes, and decided it was time to wrap up for real. But before heading out, I figured I'd hit the restroom. I stood up, stretching, and made my way down the hall. The halls were darker than usual, save for the green exit signs and the occasional flicker from one of those energy-saving bulbs that never quite worked right. The motion sensors were laggy. I had to wave my hand just to get the bathroom lights to turn on. After I washed up, I lingered by the sink, staring at myself in the mirror. My face looked older than 36, like something was slowly draining me every day. When I stepped out, I paused. Something had changed. There was a sound, faint at first, but in the vacuum of silence, it stood out. A soft, rapid tapping, like fingers flying over a keyboard. Mixed with it was the occasional beep, sharp and metallic, like a calculator being punched too hard. I froze, trying to place it. That sound hadn't been there earlier. Then I saw it. Across the sea of empty cubicles, only one monitor was now on, Joseph's desk. Wait, had I missed something? Just a while ago, the floor was pitch dark, completely still, except for the light from my own cubicle. I was sure of it. I squinted toward the faint glow across the office. "Hey, Joseph," I called out hesitantly. "You back in here, man?" No response. The tapping continued. I stepped a little closer, squinting. Joseph had left hours ago. I remembered him saying, "Don't stay past 9, man," with that nervous half-laugh of his. It was a weird rule everyone at the firm joked about, how the office didn't like being disturbed past 9. Superstitious crap, I thought. But tonight, Joseph's monitor was glowing and someone was sitting there. I started toward it, slow at first, the hush around me amplifying the sound of my own footsteps. Each step echoed faintly off the walls, hollow and wrong. The darkness seemed to stretch between me and the glowing monitor, making the short walk feel longer than it should. My eyes strained against the shadows, trying to make out the figure hunched at the desk. Something inside me itched, not pain exactly, but a growing sense that I shouldn't be doing this, that whatever I was walking toward, it wasn't supposed to be here. The figure was noticeably smaller than Joseph. He was about 6'2", broad-shouldered, the kind of guy who always filled up his desk chair. But this person, hunched low, slight-framed, almost swallowed by the office chair. I inched closer, heart thudding louder. The figure looked young, maybe mid-20s, though it was hard to tell with her face hidden behind a curtain of long black hair. She wore a blazer that looked too big for her, sleeves half covering her hands. She typed like her life depended on it, fingers flying across the keys, muttering under her breath. Click-clack, mumble, calculator beep, repeat. I hesitated a few feet away, still unsure if this was someone from another department or something else entirely. Hey, excuse me? No response. I frowned. Hey, you can't be at someone else's desk. That's company policy. Zero tolerance. You're not supposed to be here. Her muttering got louder. Something about deadlines, about numbers not matching, about someone named Reed breathing down her neck. Ma'am? I tried again. Still nothing. My pulse quickened. There was something off. Not just the hour or her intensity, but the air around her. It felt heavier, like the room had sunk an inch deeper into the floor. I stepped closer, reached out, and touched her shoulder, even though my hands were shaking a little. I wish now I'd just turned around, left her there, muttering in the dark. But I didn't. She stopped. Dead silence. Then, in one violent motion, her head whipped around. Her eyes were red, not bloodshot, rimmed with raw, bleeding veins. Her skin was pale, almost gray, lips chapped and cracked. She looked at me like an animal caught mid-snarl. "Leave me the hell alone," she screamed. "I need to finish this tonight, or I'll be terminated." I stumbled back, tripping over the side of the cubicle, heart hammering. But then, her voice softened. She stood slowly, calmly now, her lips curling into a crooked smile. "Hey," she whispered, "can you help me finish this?" A pause. "You don't want me to lose my job now, do you?" Then came the laugh, not loud, not wild, just wrong. A broken giggle that grew too wide, too long, like her mouth was stretching further than it should. The sound slithered into my ears, cold and intimate, like it knew something about me. My legs locked up, my throat went dry. For a few seconds I genuinely thought I was going to pass out, like my heart was trying to claw its way out of my chest. I'm not a heart patient, but if I were, I'd be yesterday's news, no doubt. Just another body slumped in a cubicle, never making it to sunrise. Somehow, I forced myself to move. I was still on the floor, one hand planted behind me, legs refusing to cooperate. My eyes never left her. Not for a second. I kept thinking, don't blink, don't lose sight of her. Every twitch of her fingers, every tilt of her head made my skin crawl. At any moment, she might leap, teeth bared, eyes wild. She was still smiling, still laughing, but it felt like it was building towards something worse. My heart kept asking if I was about to die here. My brain was screaming, get up, get out. My knees were jelly, my lungs locked up like I'd forgotten how to breathe. I staggered back a step, then another, blinking against the static clouding my vision. The buzzing in my ears nearly drowned out her laughter. Every instinct screamed run, but my body felt like it was peeling away from itself. I don't remember choosing to move, only the moment my legs finally listened. I bolted, didn't look back, didn't grab my bag, just ran. The elevator was too slow. I slammed through the stairwell door, taking steps 3 at a time. I nearly tripped more than once, my feet slipping over the concrete edge. It felt less like I was running, and more like my legs had taken over, dragging the rest of me with them. My breath echoed against the walls, frantic and uneven, my heartbeat louder than the slamming of my feet. At the bottom, I burst into the lobby, into the cold night, gasping like I'd been underwater. I stumbled out into the parking lot and collapsed against the side of my car, heart still jackhammering in my chest. I stood there for minutes, bent over, hands on my knees, trying to catch my breath, my head spinning like I'd just sprinted through a nightmare. When I finally felt steady enough to drive, I reached for my keys and froze. They weren't there. My jacket pocket was empty. That's when it hit me. I'd left them on my desk. My bag too, still inside. No way in hell I was going back in there. I patted down my jacket and jeans, desperate, and let out a shaky breath when I felt my phone, the rectangle of it against my thigh. Thank God. At least I had that. I called Amanda with shaking hands. My thumb could barely hit the right button. When she picked up on the second ring, I opened my mouth, but no real words came out. Just a jagged breath and something close to a whimper. My voice cracked when I finally spoke. "Amanda," she said, James, concerned. Just come get me," I managed. "Please, don't ask anything. Just, please come get me." "James," she said again. I could hear the confusion in her tone rising. She got there in about 15 minutes, but to me, it felt like 15 hours. I must have called her 3 times while she was still on the road, each time more panicked than the last, just to make sure she was still coming. When she finally pulled up, I yanked open the passenger door and slid in, barely getting the seatbelt on before blurting, "Please, just drive, quick." She looked at me, startled. "Are you all right, hun?" "Just drive," I said again, eyes locked on the entrance of the building. As we pulled out of the lot, I kept my head turned, watching that glass doorway like a hawk, half expecting her, that thing, to come sprinting out of the shadows. My hands were clenched, my jaw was tight, my heart still hammering. Amanda didn't press me. She just kept glancing at me every few minutes during the drive, her fingers tightening around the wheel a little more each time. That night, I barely spoke. Amanda sat beside me on the couch, eyes wide, listening as I tried to explain. The girl, the typing, her face. She wrapped her arms around me, and for the first time in years, I cried. Not out of fear, but confusion, exhaustion. Something had broken loose inside me. She held me for a long time, whispering that I was safe now, that I was home. At some point, I must have passed out right there on the couch. When I opened my eyes again, it was well past noon. The room was bright, the TV muted. Amanda had thrown a blanket over me and left a glass of water on the coffee table. A note on a sticky pad read, "I called in sick for you. Just rest. I'll be back soon." I sat there for a while, trying to process if any of it had been real, if maybe I dreamed it all, or hallucinated the whole thing from stress. But then the image of her face, those red-rimmed eyes and that twisted smile, came rushing back like a punch to the chest. Later that evening, Nash came by, a colleague, but also a friend. One of the few people at the office I actually trusted. He had my car keys and bag in hand, the things I'd left behind in my panic. "Figured you wouldn't be in the mood to swing by," he said, trying to make light of it, but his eyes were searching mine. He also brought beer and sat quietly while I told him everything. When I got to the part about Joseph's desk, Nash leaned forward a little, his expression shifting. He let out a slow breath. "Yeah," he said quietly. "That's where she used to sit." I blinked. "She? Who are you talking about?" He hesitated, glanced at the floor, then back at me. "I don't know how much of it's true. You know how office stories get, but I've heard things from people I actually trust. That's why we always tell folks to leave before 9. There's been stuff over the years. People saying they hear loud typing when the office is empty, calculator beeps, sometimes even a girl crying." I felt a chill creep down my spine. He gave a little shrug, then added, "Sounds like Casey." "Casey?" I asked. He nodded. "Casey Morales. She used to work here, about 3 years ago. Bright, quiet, always stayed late, always trying to prove herself. Reed was her manager back then. Total asshole. Heard he gave her a hell of a time. Harassed her, constantly. She filed complaints, but nothing ever really came of it." He shook his head. "Then one morning, they found her dead at her desk. They said it was a heart attack brought on by stress. But honestly, no one really knows what happened. She was only 23. He paused. "And Reed? He went missing a few months after that. No warning, no trace, just gone." Something twisted in my gut, like grief and guilt, had fused into something heavier. I stared at my hands, trying to process the weight of it all, what she'd gone through, what I'd seen. It wasn't just fear now. It was sorrow, a deep, stinging sorrow for a girl I'd never met, but who had clearly never left. I cleared my throat. Do you have a picture of her? I don't know. Just to be sure." Nash shook his head slowly. I've looked. She's kind of off the grid. No social media, no public records with photos. A few old news articles mention her death, but weirdly, none of them have a picture. Not even her employee file had one back then, just her name. The articles were pretty brief too, just said a young woman was found dead in an office one morning. Never even mentioned the company name. Almost like someone didn't want the full story getting out. Maybe the reporters were pressured, I don't know. That's why I said earlier, not sure how true all this is. Most of what we hear is passed on from the older guys who were around back then. One version becomes another. He looked at me. I'm sure we could get to the bottom of it, do some digging, but do you want to? I shook my head immediately. No, I really don't. That hit harder than I expected, like the world had tried to erase her, and she was clawing her way back to be seen. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Amanda was asleep beside me, her hand loosely resting on my chest. My mind wouldn't stop replaying her voice, her eyes, that desperate plea. You don't want me to lose my job, do you? I never went back. Amanda called in for me the next morning. That same afternoon, I typed out my resignation and sent it in, told them they could dock my final check if needed, that I understood not serving the notice period came with a cost. I just couldn't set foot in that place again, not for another hour, not even to clear my desk. I couldn't bear the thought of sitting in that office, knowing a dead girl had once been just a few feet away from me, still haunting the glow of her unfinished work. And even now, months later, I still hear it sometimes. That sound, that rhythm, click-clack, calculator beep, mumble. Sometimes, when I'm the last one in my new office, I catch myself glancing down the hallway, just to make sure all the monitors are dark, just to make sure she's not here, because I don't think Casey ever left. Not really, and maybe she never will.